is a massive driver of global insecurity. It undermines our ability to control who comes here. And that makes people angry. It makes me angry, frankly, because it's unfair on ordinary working people who pay the price, from the cost of hotels to our public services struggling under the strain. And it's unfair on the illegal migrants themselves, because these are vulnerable people being ruthlessly exploited by vile gangs. So look, we must each take decisive action in our own countries to deal with this. Nobody can doubt that the people we serve want this issue sorted. But the truth is, we can only smash these gangs once and for all if we work together. Because this evil trade, it exploits the cracks between our institutions. It pits nations against one another. It profits from our inability at the political level to come together. And that's why, from the moment I took up office, I said the UK would convene this summit. And I'm really delighted to be joined by all of you here today. We got representatives from more than 40 countries across the world. There's never been a bigger gathering of people on this issue, building a truly international effort to defeat organised immigration crime. And let me tell you why this matters, and take you back to a visit I made as a relatively new Member of Parliament back in 2016 to the camps on the outskirts of Calais. I can still remember it in my mind's eye. The muddy ground, sodden with rain and human waste. Children as young as 5 and 7. And that struck me because that's the same age as my children were then. Huddled together in freezing temperatures with almost nothing to keep them warm. Now, of course, that infamous camp has long gone, but the evil of the people smuggling businesses that put people there, that remains. The gangs remain. The exploitation of desperation, of misery, of false hope, that all remains. And there's nothing progressive or compassionate about turning a blind eye to this. There's nothing progressive or compassionate about continuing that false hope, which attracts people to make those journeys. That we've got to get to grips with it once and for all. That's when I spoke at the Interpol meeting in Glasgow last year. I said we need to treat people smuggling as a global security threat, similar, if you like, to terrorism. We've got to bring to bear all the powers we have at our disposal in much the same way that we do against terrorism. Now, before I was a politician, I was the Director of Public Prosecutions in England and Wales. And we worked across borders throughout Europe and beyond Europe to foil numerous plots, saving thousands of lives in the process. We prevented planes from being blown up across the Atlantic and brought the perpetrators to justice. So I believe we should treat organised immigration crime in exactly the same way. I simply don't believe that organised immigration crime cannot be tackled. So we've got to combine our resources, share intelligence and tactics, and tackle the problem upstream at every step of the smuggling journey, from North Africa and the Middle East to the high streets of our biggest cities. And look, to that end, we have begun to make real progress. Since I came into office, the UK has reset its entire approach to international collaboration. I put smashing the gangs on agendas of international summits, showing that the UK now means business, working together with our allies, with you. We've struck new agreements and plans with so many of the countries represented in the room here today. Take our work with France as a good example. Now, previously, their maritime doctrine prevented French law enforcement from responding to small boats in shallow waters. But now we're working with them to change that, to make sure we get new border patrols and specialist units on the French coast using state-of-the-art surveillance technology. With Germany, another example, if you can believe it, it wasn't technically illegal to facilitate people smuggling to a country outside the EU, like the United Kingdom. But now it will be. And with our new bilateral agreement, Germany will be able to prosecute the criminal networks facilitating this vile trade. Just a few examples of the international collaboration that's so important to taking this challenge on. And it's beginning to bear fruit. At the end of last year, a major operation by French, German and British law enforcement smashed an Iraqi smuggling network with multiple arrests and the seizure of dozens of boats and engines. In Amsterdam, a man was arrested on suspicion of supplying hundreds of small boat parts to people smugglers. That was a joint operation by our national crime agency, together with Dutch and Belgian police. We're also working upstream to address factors that drive people towards small boats in the first place. Working with the authorities in Albania and Vietnam on campaigns to deter those who are thinking about making that perilous journey. Because there's also nothing progressive about allowing working-age people to come here illegally instead of supporting them to build their own economies, secure a better future for their own countries, and build a safer, more prosperous world. But look, as we work together more closely, I think, than ever before, we've also got to take the tough measures at home in our own countries. That doesn't mean gimmicks. You may be familiar with the gimmicks of the last 14 years here in Britain. It means understanding the problem and coming up with pragmatic solutions that work, actually fixing what's wrong. Few things show this more clearly than our approach to border security. We inherited this total fragmentation between our policing, our border force, and our intelligence agencies. A fragmentation that made it crystal clear when I looked at it that there were gaps in our defence, an open invitation at our borders for the people smugglers to crack on. To be honest, it should have been fixed years ago. But we're doing it now with our new Border Security Command, led by Martin Hewitt, who many of you, I think, will know. We are recruiting hundreds of specialist investigators from across our police, our border force, and intelligence services, creating an elite border force, working with our international partners, ending the fragmentation. Over £150 million invested over the next 2 years. And new powers and criminal offences to get the job done. So the police will be able to seize the phones and devices of migrants arriving on our shores and gather intelligence about the smugglers. The police will be able to act when they've reason to believe preparations are being made for criminal activity, instead of waiting for a crime to happen before they can act. And it will be an offence to endanger lives at sea, to prevent more tragic deaths in the Channel. We're also deploying resources away from the Tories' wasteful Rwanda scheme, a scheme that spent over £700 million of taxpayer money to remove just 4 volunteers. Now, you know, even if that scheme had gone well, they were claiming that they might remove 300 people a year. Well, since coming to office, I can announce today we've returned more than 24,000 people who have no right to be here. That would have taken the Rwanda scheme 80 years to achieve. That's what I mean about not giving in to gimmicks, just focusing our efforts and resources on the nuts and bolts of removing people, getting the asylum system working properly. That's how we've delivered the highest return rates for 8 years and the 4 biggest return flights ever. We're also ramping up the deportation of foreign national offenders, with a new team of specialist frontline staff going into our prisons, speeding up the removal of prisoners who have no right to be in this country. Now, all of this is providing a real disincentive to people thinking about coming to Britain illegally. But if we're talking about incentives, we need to talk about the people smugglers as well. Because they don't care about borders. They don't care about the people that they traffic. They don't care about our country and our people. They only care about one thing: money. They make huge profits out of ruining people's lives. A few months ago, I went to see some of the boats that have been seized at the NCA headquarters. Now, we call them small boats, but honestly, they're not worthy of the name boat. I don't know what you would call them. To me, they look like death traps. Flimsy, rubber, no firm structure. You wouldn't even let your children climb aboard, even for a second, in shallow water. Seriously, if they were a car, they'd be off the road in minutes. The police would intervene. And don't tell me they've got any other purpose other than people smuggling. So I see no reason why we can't go after them. And so we are. We've seized hundreds of boats and engines, driving up the costs for the smugglers. We've taken down 18,000 social media accounts. That's 10,000 more than last year, disrupting the way smugglers promote their services. And more than that, we've announced a new sanctions regime, treating people smugglers like terrorists, freezing their assets, banning their travel, putting them behind bars where they belong. But just as important, putting their entire model out of business, securing our borders on behalf of working people. Because, as I said at the start, this is about fairness. And there is little that strikes working people as more unfair than watching illegal migration drive down their wages, their terms and their conditions through illegal work in their community. I've got to be honest here. For too long, the UK has been a soft touch on this. Whilst the last government were busy with their Rwanda gimmick, they left the door wide open for illegal working, especially in short-term or zero-hours roles, like construction, beauty salons, and courier services. And whilst, of course, most companies do the responsible thing and carry out right-to-work checks, too many dodgy firms have been exploiting a loophole to skip this process, hiring illegal workers, undercutting honest businesses, driving down the wages of ordinary working people. And all of this, of course, fueling that poisonous narrative of the gangs, who promise the dream of a better life to vulnerable people, yet deliver a nightmare of squalid conditions and appalling exploitation. Well, today we are changing that, because this government is introducing a tough new law to force all companies to carry out these checks on right to work. They take just minutes to complete, so they're not burdensome for business, and they can be done free of charge. So there's no excuses, and no ability to claim that they didn't know they had illegal workers. And failure to comply will result in fines of up to £60,000, prison terms of up to 5 years, and the potential closure of their businesses. Now, None of these strategies, as you know, are a silver bullet. I know that. But each of them is another tool, an arsenal that we're building up to smash the gangs once and for all. We must pull every lever available, and that is what this Labour government is doing. No shortcuts, no gimmicks, just the hard graft of sleeves rolled up practical government, securing our borders, getting a grip on illegal migration, and delivering our plan for change. We want to work with you and with everyone who is as determined as we are to end the misery and evil of people smuggling. Because together we will save lives. We will secure our borders. We will smash the gangs that undermine our security and deliver the fairness for the working people that we serve. Thank you very much. Now we're going to see a short video from the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni.
Good morning, everyone. I wish to thank Prime Minister Starmer, my friend Keir, for his invitation to this important summit dedicated to border security. It is a priority that Italy and the United Kingdom jointly share, a priority that represents an essential focus on the bilateral cooperation between our nations, because we both are convinced that our freedom and the prosperity and well-being of our people do depend on security. Keir and I agree that border security also, and above all, depends on governing migration flows and combating mass irregular immigration, a global phenomenon which affects Europe in particular, both within and outside the EU borders. This is why our government have long been working together to defeat the criminal organizations that exploit and profit from people's despair and legitimate desire for better living conditions. We are uniting our efforts, making policy forces, intelligence service and judicial authorities speak louder, because our common goal is to target the problem at its very heart, namely the profits made by boatmen smugglers and traffickers. And we are doing so by following that extraordinary intuition of two Italian great judges, Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, which is summed up in the words "follow the money," and which has become an international model. Equally crucial in this respect is the strengthening of Europol's and Eurojust's cooperation with third countries. We're also working together to address the root causes of migration and thus guarantee the right not to migrate. This means building a model of cooperation with the countries of origin and transit of migration flows so that they can prosper on the resources they own. And I am very satisfied from this point of view with our excellent cooperation with the United Kingdom in the framework of the Rome process, notably on the front of assisted voluntary returns. Yet fighting irregular migration also means encouraging instead regular migration and reaffirming the principle that it is up to each nation and not to traffickers to decide who should enter and who should not enter its own territory. We also agree with Keir that we should not be afraid to imagine and build innovative solutions, like the one that Italy launched with Albania, a model that was criticized at first, but that then has gained increasing consensus, so much so that today the European Union is proposing to set up return hubs in third countries. This means that we were right and that the courage to lead the way has been rewarded. We still have a lot of work to do together, and I am very happy to be able to count on the support and collaboration of the United Kingdom within this challenge. I'm convinced that today's summit will enable us to further strengthen our synergy and to speed up the momentum towards new projects and concrete initiatives. Thank you, and I wish good work to all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you to the Italian Prime Minister. And good morning, everyone. Can I thank everyone for travelling here from all over the world? Interior Ministers, senior law enforcement delegations from over 40 countries and organisations. We are so pleased to welcome you to London and here to Lancaster House for this, the first summit of its kind on organised immigration, crime and border security. And to have so many people come from across the world shows the seriousness with which all our countries are taking these issues, but also bluntly how much more together we need to do. Of course, we are not the first generation to grapple with international migration, the societal, economic, security consequences that flow, and through the centuries, of course, people have travelled across borders to work, to study, join family, to flee war or persecution, to escape poverty, to seek a better life or a different future, to chase new resources, or to forge new nations. But in recent years, we have seen new and serious patterns and scales of irregular and illegal migration, causing major challenges for border security, for national security, for the rule of law, for countries and the economy across so many of our countries, in source, in transit, and in destination countries alike. And two factors have accelerated and changed some of the challenges our countries face. Firstly, technology. The physical distances between nations and continents may not have changed, but technology has made the world feel a lot smaller. Organising journeys can be faster and easier than ever, and the details of a different future is suddenly right there on a smartphone in the palm of your hand. And the second factor is the emergence of a vast and ruthless criminal industry that stretches across borders and across continents, worth billions of pounds. The criminal smuggler and trafficking gangs who profit from undermining our border security, our national security and the rule of law, and from putting lives at risk, have grown and stretched across the globe. And every country here will have different stories to tell and insights to share. But across all of our countries, we've seen that organised immigration crime posing a significant and growing global threat with far-reaching consequences for us all, breaking our laws, undermining our security and our cohesion. From the source countries where gangs prey on the vulnerable, to transit countries where people and equipment pass through towns and borders unchecked, to destination countries managing the financial, the social and the criminal fallout, no part of the journey is untouched. And those gangs profiting from what is a vile trade in human beings are exploiting more people than ever before. You've heard from our Prime Minister what that means for us here in the UK. And in just 6 years, we've seen a criminal industry organising the small boat crossings take hold along our borders. 300 people crossed the channel on flimsy, dangerous small boats 6-7 years ago. But 4 years later, that rose to over 30,000. An increase, a 100-fold increase, powered by smuggler and trafficking gangs. The gangs who advertise on social media false promise of illegal jobs, gangs who organise the logistics, the fake papers, the illegal finance networks to take everyone's money, have thousands of pounds. The supply chains, the flimsy rubber boats, the engines, and perhaps for us, one of the most disturbing things of all, for us and for France, for the Calais Group, to see some of the fake life jackets, including fake life jackets for children that would not keep anyone afloat in the cold sea. And then the organisation along the beaches of France, the violence, the increasing and outrageous violence against law enforcement. And to give you the example of how they run some of those organisations, we've seen the small boats, the flimsy rubber boats, take off as taxi boats, make people wait in the freezing water, in the freezing sea. So they then wait to be picked up, to climb onto the boats, and then overcrowd the boats with women and children put in the centre of the boat. The boat can then fold in, and it's the women and children who get crushed. If the fuel in flimsy containers then leaks and mixes with salt water, that can cause terrible, terrible burns. And then we've seen children crushed to death, and yet the boat carries on. And that shameful, disgraceful crime where criminal gangs have profited from those lives being lost. And that's why we cannot let that carry on. All of your countries will have the different stories of the way in which the gangs are exploiting people into sexual exploitation, into slave labour, into crime, the way in which the gangs are using new technology, not just the phones, the social media to organise, but even the drones to spot where the border patrols are, the operations along the land borders across continents. But it is governments and not gangs who should be deciding who enters our country. And those gangs are operating and profiting across borders, so we and our law enforcement need to cooperate across borders now to take them down. That's why, as you've heard from our Prime Minister, we are strengthening our laws here in the UK, bringing in new counter-terror powers so we can seize phones, investigate preparatory acts, so we can crack down on the illegal working and modern slavery, and establishing our new Border Security Command. But we know that strengthening our border security means working with all the countries on the other sides of our borders, not just standing on our shoreline shouting at the sea. We know too that no country can do this alone. And that is why the partnerships and everyone gathering here is so important. So today we will talk about what to do to tackle this vile trade in human beings, how we choke off the supply chains, the false papers, how we go after the money, how we take down the advertising, and how we disrupt, how we pursue, how we prosecute, how we pursue this global battle against a trade in people. It is our determination to do this together. The alliances that we build across our borders can be stronger than the criminal gangs who seek to undermine us. So thank you all for joining with us in this event today, this first summit. We have so much work to do during the course of the day, so many conversations to have, but thank you so much for being part of it, and I look forward to hearing everyone's views during the conference today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Hopefully this will show people